This is the useful life video. This is a topic that confuses everybody from tenants to landlords to property managers. It can be really confusing, and I want to try to make it as clear as possible. We have an entire document that is 2 pages long that explains useful life in a written format. So that, to me, I'm a visual person, that can be a little bit more helpful, but I also want to try to explain it so that hopefully it makes sense. It's really not that complicated when you think about it. Useful life is simply how long an item is supposed to last. What is the useful life of a pen? What is the useful life of carpet in the case of a rental property? And landlords are not supposed to charge tenants for things that are beyond their useful life, because everything in a home is expected to be replaced at one point or another. It's all supposed to wear out. You wouldn't go rent a home that was original from 1985 and expect for that to be an acceptable place to live. We all know the paint is going to be peeling, the carpet is going to be incredibly worn, and no one is going to want to live there. So there is an upkeep that landlords have to do on the items in a home that have a useful life assigned to them. So let's say we've got a carpet meant to last for 5 years. It's brand new when the tenant moves in. The tenant lives there for 2 years. During the course of that time, as tenant's moving, the carpet gets ripped as they're placing their furniture down. Oh, that's not good, but hey, it rips and it is what it is. Or it gets stained, or it just gets really, really worn out from all of the excessive traffic or something like that. So that carpet was supposed to last for 5 years. They move out. They were only there for 2. We do an assessment and determine this carpet cannot be salvaged. It cannot be repaired. It cannot be cleaned. It needs to be replaced. It's completely destroyed at this point. Now, the landlord cannot then go and charge the tenant for 100% new carpet. And a lot of times landlords think like that because it's like, 2 years ago, I just paid to recarpet my whole house. Now I have to do it again. I shouldn't have to pay for that again. And in a way, they're right, but not by placing 100% of the financial responsibility on the tenant. Since 2 years were used and 3 years did not get used, the landlord can essentially charge the tenant for those 3 years that they did not get out of the carpet, that they should have gotten based on how long it was supposed to last. So in a case like that, the tenant would be charged 3/5 of the replacement cost, or 60%. So landlord recarpets the entire place. Let's say it's $10,000, just as a example. That's a high amount, but let's say it was. Tenant would be charged $6,000. Landlord would be responsible for the $4,000. So that's hopefully a clear example of what useful life is. There are things that useful life does not apply to. So using my same example of carpet, let's say you had a pet and that pet urinated all in that carpet and it destroys the carpet. Okay, we got to replace it. But now underneath the carpet, underneath the pad, is subfloor, and that subfloor has now been permeated with urine, and now there's an odor that cannot come out. That is not a useful life issue. That's a cleaning issue, and cleaning is not useful life. There is no useful life on cleanliness. That's a totally different standard in which properties are supposed to be returned back to landlords in the condition in which they were received as it pertains to cleanliness. So if the reason the carpet is being replaced is because of urine damage, and the subfloor has to be treated or replaced because of extensive urine damage, and this is just an example, then the tenant will be charged for the 3/5 replacement cost, to use our previous example, and 100% of the odor treatment subfloor work that needs to be done, because that is damage that goes beyond useful life, and it's a cleanliness thing, which is not a useful life proration. So that's what we mean when we talk about useful life. We try to make this really clear if you're a tenant on a security deposit disposition, because it will say tenant responsible for this percentage, and here's why. We try to tell you not every carpet's new when you move in. So you might move into a property that the carpet's already 3 years old, but it's in good shape, and it's 5-year carpet, and you lived there for 2 years, to use the same example as before, and now that carpet definitely needs to be replaced. It doesn't matter how good that carpet looked when you moved in. It was already 3 years into its 5 year of useful life. After the 2 years of a tenant being there, it now needs to be replaced at 5 years. 100% cost to landlord. 100% cost, because it's already reached its 5-year useful life. That is just another way to think about it. We aren't always going from zero of brand new. Oftentimes we're starting at this already has been used for a certain amount of time, and so we're taking that into account whenever we decide how much a tenant is responsible in the event of damage. Here's what else is not useful life. taking an item that's past its useful life in a home. So let's say a ceiling fan is supposed to last for 15 years. And as a tenant, I look at that fan and I go, that thing's at least 20 years old. Like, I know that. So I'm just going to take it because it's past its useful life and the owner should have to replace it anyway. That's not what useful life is. You don't get to take it, because if it's still in good shape, an owner can continue using an item in a rental property even beyond its useful life, as long as it's functional and working and all that. So if you steal something, take something from the property because you think, well, it's past useful life, so I'm just going to take it, in that case, you would be charged for 100% of the replacement cost. So this sometimes happens with window blinds, ceiling fans, believe it or not, appliances. If those things are removed from the property, then the tenant will be charged for 100% of the replacement of a stolen item. Also, you can have antique or unique items. You can have original hardwood floors or something like that in a property that, if damaged, there is no real way to do a useful life calculation to determine how much a tenant should be charged. So there are times where there is no useful life on this item. This is an item that had a special significance to the property. And we try, as a management company, just from a philosophy, we try to have as few of those as possible in any rental properties that we manage, because it can be such a problem when those things are damaged and there's no real way to replace it. So other things could be a tree that provided a lot of shade to a property that a tenant damages somehow, either by neglect in watering it or cutting it down or something like that. There can be things like that that are difficult to quantify. What was the value of that item? The tree did not have a useful life, so replacing it is not even possible. I can't put a big shade tree back in. So I say all that not to go too into the weeds on different things that can happen, but just to say that useful life is a general guideline that covers like 95% of things in a rental property when it comes to charging tenants. But there is this 5% of other stuff that is a little bit more gray. And so we try to be as fair as possible in those situations, have a dialogue with the tenant, explaining the logic behind it, and coming to an agreement on why things are charged the way that they're charged. So what even is useful life for all these different items? We try to keep a list of things that's as fair as possible. Believe it or not, there's not like a legal standard that California has that says all carpet is 5 years. Again, a lot of it depends upon the manufacturer. You can buy higher grade carpet that's meant to last longer, and you can buy low grade carpet that barely lasts a year. So it depends on the manufacturer, but there are guidelines from Housing and Urban Development on a federal level that say how long things should last that we will reference. And that's really for federally funded housing, but it's still helpful because the numbers are useful and it gives us something to go back to point at. But just to give you a few, you have carpet, which should last from anywhere from 3 to 7 years, kind of depending on the type of carpet. You have paint, which can be as low as 1 year if you're dealing with flat paint, but as high as 5 or even 7 years for a really high quality enamel paint that should last longer. And paint on walls is different than paint on cabinets. Cabinet paint should last longer. That's enamel paint. Whereas paint on walls is typically 3 to 5 years as a general rule. Then you have things that should last longer, like appliances. Those are typically 10 years or more. You have things like window blinds, which can be anywhere from 4 years for cheap blinds to 15 years plus for like a really nice wood shutter or something like that. So we do have lists of how long these things should be. And then we look at those lists as we're seeing damages and trying to charge tenants for that, of how much useful life was left, and making sure that calculation is fair for both the tenant and the owner that are involved. So we try to be very fair with that. At the same time, the owner is not supposed to just eat damages that are done to a property that are above normal wear and tear, which is why we have the security deposit. So hopefully this has been explanatory, and that it is a both sides thing. We're trying to do this fairly for the owner, for the tenant, and making sure we're in accordance with California law so that we do the right thing by our owners and by our tenants. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. If you have any other questions on useful life, I would again say reference the document that we have. Hopefully that will bring some more clarity as well. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.